Thou preparest a table before me, wild harvest edibles, part 56. Just to remember, as you navigate any health challenge, it's always recommended that you partner with a medical practitioner that shares your philosophy of the care of the human body, in disease and in health. The information shared in this presentation is meant to educate and improve your wellness toolbox and aid in returning it to health if sick, and maintaining good health when well. It should not be construed as medical advice, simply as tools that have been successfully used by others in similar situations. As always, investigate and verify any treatment, protocol, or procedure for yourself, not blindly accepting anything without due diligence. Thomas Edison stated that the doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will instruct his patient in the care of the human frame, in diet, and the cause or prevention of disease. In Counsels on Diet and Foods, Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, in 1885, it was stated that there are many ways of practicing the healing art, but there is only one way that heaven approves. God's remedies are the simple agencies of nature that will not tax or debilitate the system through their powerful properties. Pure air and water, cleanliness, a proper diet, purity of life, and a firm trust in God are remedies for which the want of thousands are dying. Yet these remedies are going out of date because their skillful use requires work that the people do not appreciate. Fresh air, exercise, pure water, and clean, sweet premises are within the reach of all, with but little expense, but drugs are expensive, both in the outlay of means and the effect produced upon the system. In 3 John 1 verse 2, stated, Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers. In Romans 12, 1 and 2, Paul says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your body as a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Today we'll start looking at the thistle, the plume thistle in particular. There are a number of different species, Sericium, as well as other large thistle species that are very similar in nature and have very similar properties. They're both perennial and biennial, depending on the species, and they can grow to be 4 feet tall. Deeply taprooted is a common similarity between them, and they're named for their long plumes on their seeds. We can see those being exhibited in the picture on the bottom. The flower has tufts of up to 50 petals, with the stamens and petals emerging from the green top. You can see them extending beyond the flower petals there. The bulb is atop a tall leafless stalk. It can be up to 1.5 inches in diameter, and it can actually be quite fleshy and have a nice fluid in it that can take the place of water if they're in the absence of water. They can be up to 1.5 inches in diameter and covered in 1/2-inch spikes. So very, very spiky for sure. The flower dries and the plume replaces it, as you can see below. 1 plume per seed with about 20 to 30 seeds per seed head. And it's dispersed by the wind. You can see the large basal rosette of the spiny leaves at the bottom here, or at the central picture there. So the leaf, all the different species, are covered with spines and begin at a basal rosette of leaves at the bottom. You can see a diagram of the seed plume here and the ray flower, with the D and B being the actual seed. So it has very deep lobes, as you can see, cutting in towards the middle rachis of the leaf, and it can be up to 11 inches long. Some may be woolly, others may not be. The upper surface is typically green. The central picture here shows a very green upper surface and a more muted color on the bottom. It can be sometimes mottled. From an edibility standpoint, the roots, leaves, seeds, and unopened flower buds are all edible. You can see the taproot in the picture on the right. It takes a nice digging tool to get that up in enough volume to utilize, but there are nice tools that make that possible. So eat the root any time of the year, although the younger the root is, the less bitter it will be. The young flower buds, you can use in salads before the spines stiffen. And cook it like an artichoke later on. You can see one cut in half here, so they'd be boiled and utilized as an artichoke before the flower emerges at the top. So the young leaves are picked in the spring while they're still pliable and soft, and you can harvest the seeds after the flower head dries. You can see the seeds directly attached to the bottom of the plume in the lower right picture. Thistle root stew, 2 cups each of the following: thistle root, leek, carrot, and then 1 cup each of cauliflower and broccoli. Take half a chopped onion and 2 cloves of diced garlic, and then you're going to cook those veggies for 15 to 20 minutes in water, and then add the additional liquid ingredients: another cup of water, a cup of coconut milk, and a cup of soy milk, essentially to make it thick and creamy. And you can add sea salt to taste. So simmer that again for another 15 to 20 minutes, and then mix with an immersion blender that can make it more creamy in nature. You can add some other things to it, like quinoa or other grains if you like. Stop when the desired thickness is reached. In fact, that quinoa would actually add some creaminess to it once it's been used with the immersion blender. And then serve with toast or crusty bread. Nice warm stew. Some medicinal benefits. The seeds contain compounds, silymarin, especially from the milk thistle, that aid liver regeneration. So if there's liver damage from anything like toxicity or overstimulation, they can aid in its regeneration. The liver is one of the unique organs in the body that has the capacity to regenerate. If you have a diseased liver, they can take a significant portion of it out. If there's a healthy aspect of it left, it will regenerate and grow in size, which is an amazing God-given gift. It strengthens, protects, and regenerates from either chronic damage or acute damage. So this is a good thing to have as a standby or knowledge of in case there's liver damage that's undergone. The leaf or root tea aids in digestion and helps to lessen diarrhea if there is an issue with that, loose stool, helpful for diabetes and stabilizing blood sugar, and for respiratory congestion. So if you have mucus that you're trying to cough out, tea from the leaf or root can be helpful for that. Dermatitis, using that either internally or as an external wash. Parasitic infections, and helps to stop bleeding, and may also help initiate milk flow. It may have contraceptive properties and utilize in that regard too. So that would need to be investigated further before being relied upon in that situation. Our next thing that we'll be looking at is corn silk from Zea mays. It's not really a wild plant, although there are vast tracts of corn that are grown in warmer areas in the Midwest and all across the nation and in many parts of the world. It's typically cultivated. There are multiple varieties around the world, and they range from sweet corn to popcorn. One of the things that need to be cautious about is the fact that many forms of dent corn or field corn are genetically modified now and are not designed for use in food, should not be used in food because of their unknown properties. Use for ethanol is one thing, but the fact that it's wind pollinated makes it easy for it to cross-contaminate and go across to other things. So sweet corn and popcorn are not genetically modified at this period in time, but dent or field corn, unless they're organic, are likely going to be genetically modified. And you can look at a variety of different heritage varieties that are around the world, the multicolored corns. So just looking at some of the different varieties of corn, here's dent or field corn. You can see how it has the uniform dents across it when it is dried as compared to popcorn, which has a much more rounded appearance and it's shelled out, and then that is easy to pop or puff. And then sweet corn has a withered appearance on the cob and as seed. The silk is the primary beneficial agent looking at from a medicinal standpoint, and it can be consumed in various ways. But there's one silk per kernel, that's the pollen tube actually, that the pollen comes off the tassel, falls onto the corn silk, and then travels down the pollen tube to each individual kernel. That's why there's so much silk, and it is at the terminal end of each cob. So the corn kernels are edible. The corn silk can also be used more from a medicinal standpoint, and also the husks are used in many traditional ways of utilizing corn. So you can use it as a ground flour, you can pop it, you can use it on the cob, you can freeze it. A lot of different ways that corn is used. It's in just about everything that's manufactured today, but it can be used in its whole food form as well. Some medicinal properties and usages, particularly of the silk, is as a diuretic, so it aids in urine production and water release. It's also a lithotriptic. That's important. It helps to dissolve bladder and kidney stones. That's huge. Those can be just such painful experiences for people, and it can help to dissolve them and eliminate them. It's also a demulcent, which helps to relieve inflammation of mucous membranes. It looks like relieve should be R-E-L-I-E-V-E-S. And also the organs that are benefited, again, are the kidney, the bladder, and the prostate. For using the tea, in particular, steep it for 5 to 10 minutes and use 3 ounces as needed. So it's like a teacup size. Tincture, use a vegetable glycerin tincture if you are able to, rather than alcohol. So you're skipping out on those negative attributes of the alcohol. 5 to 20 drops 3 times per day. Sometimes that's referred to as TID. And then a fluid extract, which is essentially a soaking of it. It's a 1/4 to a 1/2 teaspoon 3 times a day. And then you could also use it powdered. So you can see in the little dish there beside the teacup there, it's in a silk form, and use 1 to 5 capsules in a number 0 capsule that has 5 to 30 grams about 3 times per day. I'm missing a little Y there. So some additional medicinal uses of corn. It's the best single herb for promoting urine flow. And of course, it aids in all kinds of kidney and bladder issues. It can be used as a tea and aids in many common issues. So bedwetting, you don't want to take it several hours before bedtime. Otherwise, you may end up with issues because it does promote urination. So use it before bedtime, several hours, to allow your body to release the urine before you go to bed and empty the bladder. Chronic cystitis is beneficial for that. UTIs or bladder infections, has bladder or kidney inflammation associated. Kidney stones, prostatitis, essentially inflammation of the prostate, and excess uric acid, which is a causal agent of gout, typically arise in the great toe. And also promotes urine release if it can't be urinated. So sometimes people have stoppages or blockages that prevent urine from being released or urinated out, wherever that might happen in the urinary tract. It's just an overall urinary system anti-inflammatory and beneficial agent. So urethra, kidney, bladder, prostate, and then also the stones that may be of the bladder and kidney. Now the source I got this from mentioned prostate stones, but I'm not really, I've never heard of prostate stones before because it's more of a gland. Anyway, just another thing to note there. So it's also beneficial for senior citizens who have scanty or heavy sedimented urine or mucus in the urine. Helps to alleviate that. It's excellent for people suffering from fluid retention, known as dropsy or edema. You can see a picture here on the right. People with edema, put a finger in, it's going to leave that dent there for some time as it attempts to refill the area. Typically when there's a weak heart, that's the underlying causal agent. It's also beneficial for anti-inflammatory and carpal tunnel syndrome and other prostate disorders. Some medical literature from here, Life Sciences in 2014, corn silk maiacin, which is one of the compounds, induces apoptotic cell death. That's essentially the proper cellular life cycle that sometimes can be interrupted in cancer. In PC3 prostate cancer cells via mitochondria-dependent pathway. So that's the mechanism of action, is going after the mitochondrial-dependent pathway in those cancer cells. Another one in 2017, corn silk extract improves benign prostate hyperplasia in an experimental rat model. And then also there was a review of corn silk benefits in healthcare, phytochemical and pharmacological review and molecules, August 2012. And one of the things that I found that was very interesting was that 100 to 400 milligrams per kilogram body weight of corn silk flavonoids increased the time to fatigue for exercise up to 281%. Sounds like there could be some benefits there for athletes or other people just trying to have more energy. And the effect, or the aspect that it affected the prostate cells via mitochondrial dependent pathways. Just indicates there's some benefits there. The mitochondria is the primary energy production organelle of the cell that breaks down glycogen and makes it available for the cell in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is the energy source of the cell. So that could have a very positive benefit for fatigue resistance. Also, corn silk has no adverse effects, and this supports the safety for corn silk for human consumption, as noted in the article. Again, for other presentations of a similar nature and a review of this one, you can go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.